What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the Doc Sports YouTube channel. My name is Sean Barnard, and I'm excited to get back in with some survival picks for Week 6 of the NFL season. Coming off a another crazy week of NFL football in Week 5, one where the favorites went 11-5 straight up, but just 5-10-1 against the spread. So I talked about it last week how there were some more wide open spreads, some bigger margins than we've seen in past weeks, as we're kind of seeing the separation between the good and bad teams on the year. And I think that's kind of a product of that, but an interesting slate that I'm excited to get into this week. Before I get fully into it, I do want to mention that you can get $60 worth of free member picks at docsports.com. That's docsports.com. So make sure to check that out. They got everything you need as far as written content. You can see my more in-depth opinions on each of these games in written form there. And they got everything beyond NFL football, college football, NBA, everything. It's a great time for sports right now, and Doc Sports got everything you need to make sure you get those wagers right. So to get into the slate a little bit this week. And to note back last week, there were, even with the wide open margin, there were some notable upsets that should be credited as we kind of take in mind these teams' outlooks moving forward. We saw the Cowboys upset the Rams 22-10. They were plus 5.5 and plus 300 on the money line. Giants +8 beat the Packers 27-22 overseas in London for that matchup. And the Texans were +7, plus 260 on the money line against the Jaguars and managed to pull out a win 13-6 in that matchup. So some pretty crazy games that I think do change the outlook for some of these teams moving forward. So to get into the week 6 slate, my number one survival pool pick of the week is I'm going the Packers over the Jets. Packers -7 in this matchup, coming off that loss at the hands of the Giants in London, coming home back on American soil in front of their home fans with an angry Aaron Rodgers. I expect a different result. Rodgers is 88-20-1 all time at Lambeau, which is just a crazy record there. And the Jets, they're building a little bit of momentum. They're 2-0 since Zach Wilson has returned from his injury, but both wins against the Steelers and Dolphins, pretty easy layups for him to kind of get his feet wet, get his momentum. I expect a different result against a much more complete Packers team. So I think the cards are aligning for them to put forth a convincing win in this matchup and bump the Jets off their high horse a little bit. So take the Packers in this matchup. Moving on to my number 2 pick, I have the Vikings over the Dolphins. Vikings 3-point favorites in this game. Obviously, injuries are a story to watch here. We saw the Tua concussion. Teddy Bridgewater knocked out of the game on his first pass attempt in last week's game. Same thing with concussion protocol. There is some optimism that he might suit up, but it's not looking likely. And for the time being, it's looking like Skylar Thompson is going to be taking snaps under center. He came in and played last week. He wasn't terrible. He had some positive flashes, but the bottom line is, like, you're a third string quarterback for a reason in the NFL, and it's difficult to count on you to produce a win. So Tyreek Hill also came out of that game in a walking boot. There's optimism that he's going to play. Tua did have some limited snaps this week, but Skylar Thompson is looking like the guy this week, and that's not something I would be confidently betting on for the Dolphins. I do think they have a solid roster overall, but not enough to overcome that. And the Vikings are a legitimately very good NFL team. 4-1 on the year. They seem to be rolling. Dalvin Cook coming off a very impressive week. Everything's aligning for the Dolphins to put forth a nice win in this matchup. Number 3, I'm moving on to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers over the Steelers. If it was not for kind of the name brand of the Steelers and what we all kind of perceive the Steelers to be, I think it'd be pretty universal that this is a bottom 5 NFL roster. And they have some nice pieces. George Pickens on the outside, Najee Harris is very nice. But realistically, like, Kenny Pickett is now got his second NFL action last week. In total, he's got 4 interceptions, 0 touchdowns so far through his NFL career as the starter and working under center. So he's still finding his NFL footing. I don't expect him to have an easier time against the Buccaneers. The Steelers as a whole are coming off a 38-3 loss to the Bills, which was a brutal beatdown and one where they really just got nothing going for them. So unfortunately, I expect a little bit more of the same. And while Kenny Pickett still has some optimism in the long run, I don't expect this to be the week that he turns it around. Count on a convincing victory for the Bucs. Next up, I have the Chargers -5 against the Broncos. I think the Chargers get the win here pretty comfortably. Russell Wilson, it's been so disappointing to see what he's looked like in Denver. A team that had all the hype coming into the year. A little bit of Super Bowl whispers, talks about how he's turning the franchise around. We know that they've struggled to develop a quarterback, and they finally got their guy, went out and traded for him, gave up a bag, and paid him to be the starter in the long run. And it is just not playing out. There's concerns with his shoulder injury that's troubling him. Those don't look to be getting any better. And like, until there's some massive turnaround in that team, you can't count on them to win on an any week basis. The Colts tried their hardest to give them a win on Thursday night, and the Broncos just refused to take it. So I don't expect them to have as clean of an opportunity against the Chargers, another divisional matchup. But the Chargers have looked very good this year. ranking top 5 in pass yards, total yards, pass touchdowns, and fewest turnovers. So very impressive stuff. Pretty clean performance, and their defense is much upgraded over years past. So I like the Chargers in this matchup pretty convincingly. As far as matchups to avoid this week for Survivor Pool picks, number one, I'm going the Bears and Commanders. Another Thursday night matchup. I don't know what we did to deserve these primetime games, but this is another that I'm staying away from. There's some reason for optimism for both of these teams. The Commanders are top 10 in passing attempt and actually have looked pretty good through the air in the attack. But the Bears have also forced 8 turnovers in 5 games. And with Carson Wentz as the opposing quarterback, that to me is a concern. So I lean toward the Bears getting the win in this game. I think they're going to do enough in front of the home crowd, but this is one I would rather stay away from. Next up, I have the Jaguars over the Colts. Jaguars +2. They're coming in as the underdog in this matchup. They're a weird team this year. They had some nice momentum from the start, looking to have some nice pieces, but are coming off a brutal performance, lost 13-6 against the Texans. The Texans, who also I don't think are a very good football team, and pretty clear they're going to be in the running for a top pick this year. So just a very disappointing performance. Trevor Lawrence has had a very up and down year, and they're a team that I'm just not confident betting on in any capacity right now. But I do expect them to get the win over the Colts. Matt Ryan looks completely cooked, and I would argue even worse than Russell Wilson, as we kind of saw on Thursday night last week. They seem to have the pieces. Jonathan Taylor's making a return. It's going to be a tight game. I think this one's going to come down to the wire and be more or less a coin flip, so I think you're better off avoiding it. And last up, I have the Cardinals over the Seahawks as a game to avoid. Cardinals 2.5-point favorites in this game. I do still think the Cardinals are a good team. They're 2-3 on the year, but their losses are against the Chiefs, Eagles, and Rams, which are all pretty reputable losses there. So I do think they're one of the better 2-3 teams in the NFL. I think they're going to find themselves in the playoff mix when things are said and done. But this Seahawks team is no joke. Geno Smith is not only looking one of the most impressive quarterbacks in the league, but one of the impressive just players all as far as exceeding expectations. A guy that is just being incredibly smart with the football, not turning it over, doing his thing. And that offense has shown to put up points. The defense can still do some things. So this Seahawks team is, I would say, my biggest surprise so far this year. So I'm not counting them out in any game. And even against the Cardinals, that's the case. So appreciate all you guys for tuning in. Best of lucks with all your picks this week. Make sure to like and subscribe on the channel, and I will get back with you next week.